Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the undercard of the upcoming Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fight set to go down in November. On the undercard, we're going to be seeing three-weight, two-time minimum weight champion Eubank, who currently holds the WBC title, opposite the ring, America's own Yadira Bustillos. You might be familiar with that name, as I've talked about Yadira several times here on the channel. Talented youngster whose lone defeat came at the hands of a then unbeaten Sarah Borman in Germany, 25 years old, to Eubank, Valle, who is 33, sporting a professional record of 33 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 10 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 36 professional bouts, the more experienced fighter of the two. To Yadira Bustillos, who sports a more modest record of 11 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 12 professional bouts.
Where'd she take that picture? She looks like a salsera.
Not that active in the previous year, young Yadira only fought once, and that was back in July opposite the ring, Amy Salinas. She then came back earlier this one in February opposite the ring, Tamara DeMarco, who she stopped in the 7th round of a contest scheduled for 8. Now she's facing Eubank, and as much as I like Yadira, I don't like this fight for her. Not here and not now. She's talented. She's a solid fighter, but just 12 fights into her pro career, I don't think she's ready for Eubank, currently on a 4-fight winning streak since having dropped that decision to Sarah Borman 2 years ago in 2023. Yadira has more than rebounded off that loss, but I can't say that I trust her to win this fight.
Not when the best fighter you ever fought is also the fighter that beat you. Currently, Eubank, she's on a 3-fight winning streak, having sought action 3 times last year, and she's already seen action once this one. So neither fighter has any ring rust they need to shake off.
Eubank was last in action in March of this year opposite the ring, former champion Marlena Esparza, all the way up there in the flyweight division, what turned out to be Eubank's final fight under the Golden Boy Promotions banner. She will be making her MVP debut.
Yadira's gonna help her do it.
How to best describe the fighters? Well, Eubank is a mid-range to inside fighter, action fighter, likes to throw punches and bunches and keep the punches coming, whereas Yadira is more of a boxer, more of a mover.
Pressure is how Sarah Borman was able to beat Yadira. Pressure and activity, and I think Eubank can duplicate that performance, as she is a very busy fighter in a round, in a fight.
Busy enough that she could win the rounds on activity alone. I like Eubank to win a points decision. I don't think she stops Yadira, but I do think she outworks her. Mid-range to inside, coming forward and going hell for leather. Beyond this fight, what is set to be Eubank's MVP debut, I imagine she will look to face the winner of Yuko Kuroki versus Sarah Borman
for what are the WBA and WBO titles, a unification match.
I imagine that if Eubank beats Yadira, and I think she's going to, her very next fight after that will be with the winner of that fight.
First, she's got to get through Yadira, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
Only thing I said is what's true and what's affecting all you Inoue fans. He ain't a big enough star to get television in America. Bottom line, you talking about Inoue generates money over there and people want to go over there. I don't give a fuck about that. We talking about we didn't see the fight over here. We talking about no one is talking about him on the same week because he got eclipsed.
I don't give a fuck. I'm talking about as a fan of the sport. The dude is a great fighter. And so I just don't want to hear that diminish, bro. He's an incredible fighter, and he's a top
Call
three
me when he fights somebody.
pound for pound.
Call me when he fights somebody.
Bro,
Call me when he fights
it
somebody.
comes down to a fighter that Ness cares about. But you don't know those divisions. But like you not caring about it doesn't dictate the sport, bro.
He fights somebody.
I would say that because Americans don't usually watch the lower weights, everybody seems like a nobody, even the somebodies. I mean, Mudajan Akhmadaliev was one of the somebodies at 122.
Stephen Fulton was a nobody? I wonder, who did Nestor Gibbs back to win that fight?
2 years out from what was Inoue's fight with Stephen Fulton, a fighter that a lot of Americans picked to beat Inoue, a fighter that Inoue beat easily, I'm not surprised that Americans are still shading him. The argument that Nestor is making is that Inoue's more recent fight with Mudajan Akhmadaliev was eclipsed.
Yeah, by Canelo versus Crawford. Canelo and Crawford.
It's not really a knock on Inoue in a very general sense. That was a big fight. That was a huge fight. But to say that Inoue is not a big enough star to secure a U.S. broadcaster is disingenuous. It is a haphazard argument. Normally you watch Inoue's fights on the ESPN platform via Top Rank, and what was their deal? But Top Rank's deal with ESPN ended.
That's not a knock on Inoue's celebrity or his relevance within the boxing space.
It's just a disingenuous argument to make when everybody knows that Top Rank is between broadcasters right now, and that's why his fight wasn't on ESPN.
He said, call me when he fights somebody. Though for a perspective,
Think on this.
the guy that Inoue just fought, Mudajan Akhmadaliev, a former unified champion, is comparatively a better guy than the guy that Virgil Ortiz is about to fight. In Erickson Lubin. He's a better guy than the guy that Floyd Schofield is about to fight. In Jojo Diaz.
What makes somebody a somebody, Nestor? How close they live to your house?
We're supposed to look at Erickson Lubin as some kind of a somebody in today's boxing space? Jojo Diaz, he's a somebody?
The irony is that within the boxing sphere, Inoue is a bigger celebrity than most of these Americans. Americans only tend to measure celebrity based on who other Americans are talking about all the while. Boxing has been in decline in America. So maybe what determines a star in boxing today isn't whether or not the Americans like him, if the Americans watch him, when at this time there are no major American broadcasters showing boxing.
Americans don't have the same buying power that they used to in boxing, and that audience doesn't really decide who the stars are anymore. That's why veteran heavyweight Luis Ortiz called out 4 heavyweights, none of which were from America.
So when I see this back and forth between Nestor Gibbs and that caller all over Inoue, and Nestor waiting for him to fight somebody, unless you watch those divisions, you wouldn't know who the somebodies are.
Nestor watches enough boxing that he knows who Mudajan Akhmadaliev is. It was a disingenuous argument. You're not gonna eclipse Crawford versus Canelo with MJ.
Same way Terrence Crawford could not eclipse Inoue versus Nakatani with Israel Madrimov.
Just one example.
It's just a disingenuous argument to make, but I expect no less from the American boxing scene, where they like characters and caricatures more than boxers, where they like narratives more than pugilism.
It's just more of the same.
I think he wants the rematch because it generates a lot of money, and like I said before, if he makes a few changes, if he adds somebody new to his camp, just to let the world, the boxing news, show that there's something new coming, maybe people get interested in the rematch or something. But besides that, there's so many, like you guys are mentioning, so many young talented fighters that are there that are going to be very dangerous for Canelo at this point. I think Canelo, the way he looked, he has no hunger anymore. I don't think he should be competing against those guys, because it doesn't mean anything for him. He's just going to look for the big fight, the rematch if he can, and if not, maybe retire. I don't know. That's something we have to consider, that it might be time for him to retire. But you guys are mentioning how many opportunities are there for so many guys if the titles go vacant. I think it's 8 guys are going to get a title opportunity, which is beautiful for boxing. It's beautiful for that division because the titles, like Paulie says, the titles they've been on hold for so many years, and now it's time for us to see new champions.
I wonder that Paulie Malignaggi and Robert Garcia don't watch the relay, because that's what I said in the immediate aftermath of Canelo's loss. That the silver lining is, Terence, even though he's undisputed, he's not going to stay at 168. He's going to move down, he's going to retire, he's going to do something, but he's not going to stay there. At which point, the titles will go vacant, and a new crop of champions will sprout.
Now understand that Canelo Alvarez did fight as mandatories. The guys who were in the queue, set to get a title shot, did get it. John Ryder was one.
Jaime Munguia was another, for better or worse. So was Edgar Berlanga. He wasn't holding the belts hostage. He was defending them 2 times a year.
I think this candor speaks more to wanting to see a change and wanting to see something different, because Canelo Alvarez ruled that division for a while.
I feel like Robert wants to see Canelo Alvarez run it back with Terence Crawford. He mentioned a rematch, changing a few things, adding someone to the corner, and running it back with Terence.
Yeah, Robert said that. It's been 2 weeks and we haven't heard any word from Canelo about fighting Terence again. There doesn't seem to be any rematch clause.
I don't want to see a rematch. The night of the fight, I scored that fight 10-2. 9-3, if I'm generous. For me, it was rather lopsided, and there's no reason to run it back.
So what should Canelo do? I mean, there's no need for a rematch with Terence, but at the same time, Canelo didn't mention retiring. After the fight, he said he's going to keep going. He's going to keep fighting.
On the subject of Canelo Alvarez and what he should do now that he's not a champion anymore, Chris Algieri had some suggestions.
Well, you're gonna see who they start discussions with fighting next. If he's fighting Chris Eubank Jr., then no, he's not looking for titles anymore. He's looking for name fighters. He's looking for guys to put on his record. He's looking to make money. He's looking to travel and go on his world tour. I mean, I think he's earned it if he wants to do that and go take those fights. As long as he's not holding up titles, I don't really care what he does. He could go fight Jake Paul for all I care. Go make a couple $100 million. I'm completely fine with that. My issue with that was when he was doing that while holding on to the titles, and that keeps 6 months. You have all 4
That's
titles
what I've been
being
telling
held
you.
up for other people. Yeah, we've all been saying it. But now that he's not, listen, I wish him the best. I want him to keep making money. I still want to watch him fight. I love Canelo fights. I like the way Canelo fights. I want to see him in these fights. Do I necessarily want to see him fight the next guys coming up? Of course I do, because that's what boxing is. That's when we get to see what the new guys have, if they can knock off the older guys. But if he doesn't want to go that route and wants to go on a world tour and go fight the Chris Eubanks of the world, or Jake Pauls, or just pick anyone and go travel somewhere.
You know what, Jimmy?
I'm okay with it.
Get his Tribe Called Quest on World Tour.
Exactly.
Get your Tribe Called Quest on, champ. Go. Forget the belts.
Over 60 fights in, and having already been a unified champion at one weight and a 2-time undisputed champion in another, I think it would be hard for Canelo to still be fighting for belts. That is, it would be hard to stay interested. He's already done that.
I remember 2 or 3 years ago, Canelo Alvarez expressed an interest in fighting in the United Kingdom. That would make Chris Eubank Jr. an ideal opponent. Of course, that is contingent upon Chris beating Conor again.
If he loses the rematch, it all goes to hell in a handbasket, and we might be in store for a 3rd fight.
What about Hamza Sheeraz?
Now, Hamza Sheeraz is another good shout. Very recently, old Fish Eyes Frank Warren expressed his interest in doing that fight between Hamza and Canelo. And you can imagine that Frank is licking his lips at the prospect of his boy Hamza catching Canelo at the right time, coming off a loss to Terence Crawford, not being a champion anymore, not being hungry anymore. To Frank, now is the ideal time to strike. Though doing a fight between Canelo and Hamza does not all fall on Frank or Queensberry Promotions. To get Canelo Alvarez on a plane, it's going to take more money than Frank and Queensberry have all by themselves. No, you would have to get Turkey LL Sheik to bankroll that fight. Then maybe.
Don't get it in your head that because Terence beat Canelo, all of a sudden Canelo's going to fight on the cheap, or that he's not worth anything. He's still one of the highest paid boxers, if not the highest paid boxer, in the entire sport of boxing. And it's going to take a lot of money to get him to travel. More than Frank has, all by himself.
I would pick Canelo Alvarez to win that fight with Hamza Sheeraz. if they made it. I think people are blowing things out of proportion, yes. Terence Crawford thoroughly outboxed Canelo Alvarez, but Hamza Sheeraz
is not Terence Crawford.
I think people tend to blow things out of proportion. Some portion of what you saw is that Terence Crawford is just that good. So when you suggest that all of a sudden Canelo is low-hanging fruit and he needs to hang him up or he was never any good, you're diminishing Terence's win.
When a lot of what you saw is just that Terence is that good.
I feel like everything that's happening in my career, I'm in a great position every single way. I wasn't going to go down to 168, but now if Canelo wants to come up, then, I got the WBC world title, 175. After I beat Bivol, I'm going to have all belts. So after that happens, now I'm the one who has the power. Now I'm the one. Canelo said he doesn't fight. He fights for greatness. He fights for titles. Well, let me go pick up all the titles, and let's come back into the table and talk.
I was a little bit surprised to see that David Benavidez still has Canelo Alvarez on the brain. I mean, what would be the point now? What would be the point in David fighting Canelo?
Well, before it was supposed to be about obtaining all the belts, obtaining all the marbles. If you're up there at light heavyweight right now, what are you still thinking about him for? Now, I suppose that this is one of the few fights that Canelo can have that might redeem him.
He's at liberty to do what he wants because he's earned it over 60 fights across 4 or 5 weight classes. He can go fight Chris Eubank Jr. and he can go fight Hamza Sheeraz, but fighting them and beating them would not redeem him.
He could make a lot of money with those fights, like he could make a lot of money with almost any fight because of who he is, and those would be decent scalps on his resume, decent, but one that would redeem him.
One of the only ones that could redeem him, short of beating Terence Crawford in a rematch, which I don't think he would, is a David Benavidez fight. Going up there and taking him on and taking what he's got, which right now is the WBC title.
David Benavidez anticipates that he will win the yard fight, move into a B-Vol fight and win that fight, go on to become undisputed. I don't know about all that.
But that's how he sees it happening, and that's what he suggested on the premise that that would give him leverage over Canelo when, being honest with you, I don't think anybody really has leverage over Canelo. He marches to the beat of his own drum, even off a loss. He does whatever he wants.
You winning a couple of titles at 175, he might not care about fighting for titles anymore. He's been fighting for titles for years across 4 weight classes where you're just now getting around to doing that.
Like I said, I was surprised to see that David Benavidez still has Canelo on the brain. I believe what he wants is for Canelo to pass him the torch. Some might argue that Canelo already passed the torch to Terence Crawford, who just beat him, but Terence is 37, going on 38, and he might retire shortly, so you can't really say that he got passed the torch if he could be leaving.
David wants Canelo to pass the torch to him because he's still somewhat young, has many good years left, and he hopes to absorb the audience.
The one that has made Canelo Alvarez the highest paid boxer this side of the world, David aspires to make those fans his fans, but I think he's shit out of luck. Canelo wasn't interested in fighting him before. I don't think he's any more interested in fighting him now.
Walking up the wrong tree.